Heyo, it's your boy Skegg, and I have just released a new remix for Loenbaek Into the Unknown. If you've streamed it already, thank you ever so much for streaming it. If you haven't and want to know more about the song, it will be in the description. I just thought it'd be nice to break the track down and show you how I have gone about making it. So yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into the tutorial and show you from the start how I basically came up with the ideas and how I turned it into a fully fledged remix. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Even for new or even long-time producers, remixes can be very exciting opportunities to, number one, get your name out there. There's also a competitive element, so obviously if you manage to get your submission in during the competition date, there is actually a chance to win some prizes as well. The one that I am working on at the minute is for an artist called Loenbaek Into the Unknown. So before I even download stems or even contemplate a thought of actually entering this remix competition, I will just listen through the song once. So I'd literally just play this, listen through, and I'll pick out different elements that I think could work. So for me, I always think that the vocal is the pinpoint of the original song. Obviously that is the bit, the part that the crowd would sing is the vocals. Obviously it's a bit harder for instrumentals because there's no vocals there. And obviously you got them lead synths coming in now, but they're playing more chord progressions, so I feel that I don't really want to copy that into my remix, or else it would start sounding a bit too samey to the original. So we're here now, we're coming to the chorus section. As you can tell, like, it's quite poppy, it's quite dancey, it's quite electronic. However, in my remix, I wanted to have a drop, but in my drops I like having, say, like vocal elements and that scattered about, but I don't like to have just a leading vocal persisting all the way through the drop. My first thought when I heard this chorus was, okay, I like the chorus in this original song, but I want that to be my pre-chorus. I also like the main lead synth of it. So without further ado, after my first listen, I'll show you how I started to tackle the song. Okay, so this is my Ableton project, and don't have a go at me, but it is very messy. I tend to fall into this trap a lot, that I have that much fun making it and playing around with it that I don't label things. And I know with collabs, I know people genuinely don't like that. So one thing that I always like to keep in, always, is the original stems of the song. I always like to keep in the originals there because you never know when you might need it. And also sometimes it's good for inspiration, so as you're working on the song, you might want to pull something out of the stems that you didn't originally think of. So one thing I pulled out here is the original vocal. So many miles from my old home. So honestly nothing special there. I've just sort of put a tiny little bit more reverb on it, but obviously you don't want to mess with them too much because they have already been processed for the stems anyway. So the next thing that I want to figure out is the actual chords for this track. So down here we have a grand piano. So basically what I like to do is figuring out the actual chord progression that can go underneath. Now this is the interesting thing because you can keep the chord progression the exact same as the song, which is in D major.
I like writing in D.
But because I wanted to create an actual emotional remix to it, I decided to actually transpose it into the minor key. So it did take a little bit of working to get the chords and what have you, but I believe that I got there. So just layered with the piano, it sounds a bit like this. So many miles from my old home. So all I've done here, because obviously with that standout piano, it's a bit too in your face for an intro. You'd just turn off the song straight away. So let's be honest. So quite a while ago, I did actually create this Ableton rack just called Hype Machine. And basically all it does is a bit like just before a drop comes into a song, obviously a high pass filter sort of gradually rises up, taking away all the bass and the mids just to again build that tension before the chorus. And I've also done the same here for a low pass as well. So then you can also low pass things. But the added detail that I've actually put onto here is a little bit of reverb with that as well. So it doesn't just filter the sound, it also just puts a little bit of space behind it as well. So with that on, it completely changes the piano tone.
So many miles from my
Now it sounds a lot more atmospheric.
It's perfect.
So you get the idea there in the intro. Just again, very simple, very bare, because obviously when it comes to the drop you want that to be a lot more full on.
I don't feel right.
So this is what I mean when I say about mixing up the structure of the original song as well, because the vocal phrase that was just playing there originally was actually the pre-chorus of the original song. Although it doesn't feel like it now. So basically what I've done here is sort of moved the vocals back a little bit. So now we're heading to my pre-chorus, which in the original was the chorus.
So hold on to what you know. You don't have to go it alone.
So remember me saying earlier how I wanted to keep the lead in? That's exactly what I did here. I've got just the original lead, no processing on it whatsoever. I think there might be on the group, because the lead's already a little bit low passed and obviously processed, EQ'd, compressed, everything. So I didn't want to ruin it, if you know what I mean. But then with my chords and the vocals, it creates a nice little atmosphere underneath. And then as well, one thing that I always like doing in songs, as you may or may not know, is I like to take basically the main chords of the future bass drop, just bounce those out, and then have them in the build up, again like sort of saying that the drop's about to come, building tension once again. And you can just tell it very slowly and very subtly coming in. And obviously as you get further on, and then that is just layered with different build drums and different risers. But one thing, again, which I liked about this hype machine is, as you'll see this high pass as you go through time, it will eventually slide up just before the drop, building that tension once again. So that bass and mids will just start to go now. The drop more or less is the driving factor of a song. So obviously you want that to be the absolute fucking biggest part of your song. Don't get me wrong, there's many successful songs out there that don't have a drop, but I always like to make mine extra big. Don't do that out of context, please. When I originally think of a structure for the drop, as it's probably been drilled into you through many YouTube tutorials, is call and response. This is shown in fucking so many songs. Even Queen, We Will Rock You. It's like once you go, there's always a at the end of it. Because obviously if I just played like the main chord progression that piano is playing just with one synth for 4 bars over this whole 16 bar drop, it would just be so fucking boring. As you can tell here, I have the first 2 chords chopped up. So what it'll do is it'll actually play this first chord, and then in those gaps, so you have basically 2 beats of the chord, then 2 beats of a filler, as I like to call it. Then that happens, so there you've got a tiny little call and response. A tiny little one. So you have that, and that basically is the fundamental of the drop. Because obviously when it comes in, you get, as soon as that tension's build up and you want to release it, you get that massive release of chords, which is what I really wanted in the song. And then you have this little filler. So instead of just being full on for the whole 16 bar drop, you actually have little bits that sort of take away from the fullness of it. because obviously if just this little bit by itself is quite empty, there's not a lot there, there's not much bass, it's basically just a tom fill, and then that's also layered with this little vocal chop. So in here, again, this is mainly only for Ableton, unfortunately, but one thing I like to do, because finding vocal chops can be very hard, so basically I dragged in the whole vocal stem into here and just chosen the pre-chorus, which is obviously the most popular bit of the vocals. So basically when you start playing random notes in here, obviously you just have random little chops, so actually finding a coherent and actual enjoyable chop, it can be quite frustrating. It takes a lot of work, but to take a lot of that work out and to find good parts, I usually use an arpeggiator. So basically I have this arpeggiator going every quarter note. It has actually been transposed by 12 semitones, obviously 3 steps of that. So if I actually zoom in on there, you see that it is actually playing like just random chops, like obviously 12 semitones apart. And already just holding D sharp there, you've got quite a nice little loop. So as you can see there, that's how I sort of come up with the vocal chops, just basically messing around. So that's basically it for this first little call and response bit. And then one thing I like to at least have in drop is just a nice bar or two of just complete fullness. That's the best way I can honestly describe it. So for me, this is this little section. So as you can tell, that's just everything all together. You got your vocal chops, you got your drums, you've got your bass, you've got your chords, you've got your leads. What else do you actually need in there? So I'll just break this down very quick. So drum pattern is nothing too special. It's basically just samples and that added in an arrangement that I liked, along with the hats as well. And again, as I say, if that was just by itself, I believe that it would get quite repetitive. But anyway, we go over to the lead. Again, not much on this. A bit of compression, a bit of EQ. Yeah, so I widened it a little bit because I felt like the lead was a bit too narrow in the original stem. Obviously that's okay in the verse and the pre-chorus, but with you wanting the chorus to be big, obviously a bit of width is nice there, and just a little bit of hype machine just for automation further down the line. So that's playing that quite nicely, along with a octave up. And if you don't know already, when you're in Ableton, I like to pitch up but also use this Pro. It just sort of keeps a lot of the original elements, especially if the formants are at 100. It does pitch it up, but it keeps it quite nice. Rather than it sounding like Alvin and the Chipmunks, for example, it does actually sound quite nice. Because to me, that's too digital, that's too processed, you know what I mean? Whereas if formants are at 100, it's like actually pitching up the MIDI notes rather than digitally turning the pitch up, if that makes sense. So it just creates a nice little layer. So then just going to the chord layer, again, nothing really that special here. I'll be totally honest with you. Because to be honest, what I've learned from my mistakes in the past is that actually the pads or the super saws within a chorus, especially in future bass, sometimes it's okay for those to take the backbench. I know obviously future bass, it's supposed to be large super saws in your face, if you would. But with this one, I felt like there was plenty going on without the super saws, so I'll show you what I mean. So with the actual EQ graph there, As you can tell, there's a lot of elements already in that, so you have quite a lot of bass. Obviously, you've got a lot of your highs and that from your leads and your vocals, or even high mids there. The only thing you're really missing is just that low mid warmth, if you would, or just like the pads, as you'll see, will just create, is just that harmonic chord structure, just to carry the whole thing along. So as you can tell, they are very prominent in the mix, but they're not in your face, and that's just layered with this gritty bass as well. Which again is just nothing special. It's just a square and a saw wave. Playing mainly low frequencies, but also just having a bit of crunch in the top end. Which is again why I didn't want the synths to be so high and so crunchy in the mix. So basically, that's all I wanted to show you today, is basically how I would tackle certain problems that you would come across in a remix. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you try these elements and they just don't work. Luckily, obviously for me, this worked out in this song. But yeah, I hope you guys like this YouTube video, and I want to try and keep these videos weekly. As I say, like next time I might try and do something completely from scratch. I might ask, like in the comments down here, just give me any suggestions. If you want to see me tackle any sort of challenge, just let me know down here, and I'll be happy to give it a go. Honestly, the wackier, the better. That's what I like to say. But yeah, just before the video is over, I'll do a shameless self-promotion that my remix will be in this remix contest in the future. I'm pretty sure when this video goes up, there will actually be a link down there where you can go and like it and show it some love. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you managed to learn something from it. I hope you just enjoyed sitting back and chilling and watching me just blabble on about a remix that has been doing my head in for like the last month or so. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you soon in future videos. But yeah, stay good, stay out of trouble. So yeah, I'll see you in future videos. See you later.